Awesome. Yeah, I don't want to waste too much of your time. Super pumped to have you on here, Tony, especially with last time. Obviously, some technological issues. I have a backup plan if the internet decides to crap out. So I get the phone here. I'll switch it to hotspot, but hopefully uh,
Yeah,
that won't be an
hopefully
issue.
we'll be fine, you know. So
Yeah, it should be set. I feel like we had that first date, and the bill came, and my card declined, and we had that awkward encounter. So I'm just glad you decided to do a second round with me.
that's a that's a very funny visual.
Yeah, seriously. So awesome. Well, want to thank everybody so much for being here for another episode of Deadlifts, Dogs, and Dad Jokes. Your host, DeMarco, and I have a very, very special guest on today. I'm very excited to talk to him about a couple of really exciting topics. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm a fitness professional, fitness enthusiast. I know how to get stronger, get faster, and all that fun stuff. But I'm going to be talking today about something I know very little about. So I'm very much out of my element, and I come to you with an open mind. So don't want to give away too much and spoil it, but super exciting guest here. He is a self-defense expert, which is really an oversimplification of what you do. We'll get into that more, but he studied fear and self-defense and violence for over the last 4 decades. So without further ado, Mr. Tony Blauer, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. Thank you. That was it's funny because people ask me all the time, "What do you do?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, I teach self defense. And they're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, yeah, I took karate in high school. Thanks, bye. You know, or I always wanted to know how to defend myself. You know, tell me what you do. Is it like Krav Maga? Is it like jujitsu? Is it like? And if I really tried to explain to people what we do, it really depends on the audience. I can go from, look, I just make good people safer sooner, and they're like, oh, say that again. Yeah, make good people safer. But we also work with, like, you know, tier one special operations group. Well,
yeah,
like like where's that intersection? And you know what I really do, and I started this intuitively in the 80s, is without having the language back in the 80s, I was studying the neurobiology of fear and what sudden violence does to our body chemistry, our mind. And that's how I developed the spear system, our scenario-based training, the high gear, and all the, you know, what's turned into like several uh, big companies that now have consulted and created training and programs for everyone from, like I said, military all the way down to the soccer mom. You know, so
mhm.
it's kind of, it's hard to, you know, not knowing where somebody's coming from when they say in the elevator, you know, between floors. So what do you do? I don't even know what to say sometimes. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And like you said, it's not just self defense. You're not just teaching karate classes at the local Y. There's a little
right.
bit more to it. It's funny you should say elevator speech. I actually came with notes on some stuff I wanted to talk to you about, and one of the very first things was intro and elevator speech. So we're definitely kind of thinking the same thing, which
That's
is
funny.
really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, like, you know, they say don't judge a book by its cover. But if we were in the elevator, if we role play this a little bit, and you know, the elevator stops, and the, you know, speaker comes on and says, you know, minor technical difficulties, you know, stay calm. We'll have this rectified in 15 minutes.
yeah,
And I looked over at you. I see a young, fit guy, and if you said to me, "Hey, so tell me about your shirt," or "What do you do?" I'd probably say something intuitively guessing your age and what would be the concerns or fears that you might have. And so, again, I should have asked you what your typical demographic, if you know, is to your audience. But what I mean is, if you're wearing a suit with a briefcase, and you looked at your watch right away and went, "Oh man, I hope I don't miss my flight."
yep,
I'm like, and the guy says to me, "What do you do?" I'm not going to say, you know, I teach people how to augment their jujitsu for street safety. He'd be like, "What?" I go, "Hey, listen, you know, one of the things I do is I work on situational awareness and safety for traveling executives." And
yeah. Oh, there we
now
go.
he's going like, "What?" Now, some of people listening on the call might go, well, like, that's really manipulative because no, I'm, you know, if I know you're allergic to peanuts, I'm not going to offer you peanuts. You've got to somehow create that rapport. and
Exactly.
make that connection. The hardest thing, just in terms of, this isn't a business show, and I get on a lot of them, but the reality is, if you're going to try and grow your business, like when you thought about the name of your podcast, that name is going to attract a certain audience, and they're going to have an expectation. We got to do a dad
Absolutely.
joke. We got to talk about dogs. We certainly got to talk about deadlifts. So you want to have that type of thing where the if you're a businessman, if you're a female, if you're your priorities and your risks and your fears change when you're 10, and change when
Mhm.
you're 20, and change when you're 30. The hardest thing with me growing my business is and this is actually a true story. When I was 20 years old, I was asked by this venture capitalist. I used to live in Montreal, Canada, and I was asked by this venture capitalist, what I wanted to do. And he was a friend of somebody I was training, his family, and he'd heard, hey, this guy Blauer is doing really different stuff.
Mhm.
So they set up this meeting, and he goes, hey, Ricky says that you've got this X factor. Your approach, the way you teach self-defense is different. Maybe I can help you grow it. He says, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to make the world safer.
Yeah.
And he leans back. He goes, wow, don't you think that's like a little too broad, like too like grandiose? And two things about that is, in this day and age, if you really want to grow your business, you got to know what your avatar is. That's the magic. That's a fancy little word of like, who is my client? Because when if you want to teach 50-year-old men or athletes or just boxers, you can change your marketing. But when I go, look, I just want to make good people safer.
Yeah.
It's so generic. It's hard to have that elevator speech without, in a positive way, manipulating, using your intuition, your instincts, your intelligence, going, what does this woman need to hear? That if I really believe in my product and my service, what does this person need to hear for them to go, I'm gonna do a little bit more research on this. This sounds important and interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. And, I couldn't agree with you more, Tony. I've definitely, you know, my elevator pitch has changed over the years. I'm a personal trainer. So my demographic are people that typically train with me, people, friends of mine, and people and other trainers that are involved in fitness. So it's a lot of them are female, a lot of females. I've noticed that more women will find a trainer than men. A lot of guys tend to be a little cocky. We think we have it all figured out. We don't need
Sure.
help. We can figure it out ourselves, and all that macho BS. But but yeah, I think that's cool that you're still doing the same thing, right? You're teaching people how to become more self-aware, how to manage fear, which we'll definitely talk about in a little bit, but also how to protect yourself. And the shirts that you have, like no fear and fuck fear, which I love those, by the way. Those are cool,
Right.
like eye-catching statements. I have never met another sentient being that doesn't feel fear, at least uh,
Right. If they're honest.
right, if they're being honest, right? We all feel fear in many, many ways. So
Yeah, it was ironic because the shirt I have on today is our choose courage shirt. And
no, I love it.
we tell people all the time, like, fear is contagious, but so is courage. And that's so true. You got we were in the elevator and it got stuck, and everyone started freaking out. We need one person to go, everyone calm down. I'm going to get you out of here. Just
Absolutely.
follow me. And as soon as somebody picks up on that courage, that regulates your breathing. Now it's giving you hope. It's giving you something to visualize on. So it's very important to understand that neural circuitry of fear, which is really another serendipitous vertical that emerged. It's now like a major part of my company. But back in the 80s, when I was doing what was the equivalent of Fight Club before the movie Fight Club was out,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
We used to get together every month, and we put on this makeshift equipment. I think I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Canada, Montreal, and you're either a skier or a skater when you're Canadian. And I
Hmm.
grew up on skis, but we had, obviously, hockey stuff as well. And when I first started doing these force on force things, it was like, okay, we'll put on some hockey helmets, hockey
Yeah.
gloves, taekwondo chest guard, baseball shin guards. We look like, it's like a Frankenstein suit, just pieces of different
I
equipment.
love it.
And we would
Love
beat
it.
the
I feel like
crap out of each other. videotaping with VHS. You probably don't even know what VHS stands for.
I'm not that old, Tony. I remember VHS.
Okay. Uh, so I always make that
For
joke.
that young, I should say. I am that old to remember.
Right. I got it. But we would do that, and then we would analyze what worked and what didn't work, and we would. One of my students had got beaten up in 1980.
Yeah.
My first paying student, and his loss impacted me so profoundly. I was really upset because I realized I had prepared him ineffectively.
Oh,
And it really changed. This is an interesting in terms of like an origin story for my business model. Is I was teaching what everyone else. I was teaching boxing. I was teaching taekwondo. I was teaching wrestling, and so it was like my intuitive version of mixed martial arts. And this is like for those of you that are into that sort of thing, this is 13 years before the first UFC.
Yeah, that's back. Yeah, definitely. Because first UFC was what, 93, 92?
93. Yeah. And ironically, I was at the first one writing for 3 magazines at Cage Side. But but I was preparing this kid, Mitch. I was 20, he was 15. His dad was good friends with my family. He was having a bully issue. They knew I was a martial artist. Tony, train him. So I started training him, but I was training him very passionately. I loved coaching. I was already a ski instructor. I taught tennis. I was doing like all these things. I just loved helping people. And so it's very natural to me. But what I was teaching was what I knew. I love boxing. I love taekwondo. I had wrestled for years before. So when we would do stuff, of course, I was heavily motivated, inspired by Bruce Lee's story and Bruce Lee and all of that.
Absolutely.
And then he gets in this fight and the guy drops him with a left hook. And I'm like, Mitch, like, why didn't you zigzag, slip, parry?
Exactly.
Because in my mind, if I said to you, DeMarco, you're going to get in a fight tonight, what's happening? And you go, well, it'll probably happen, I'm guessing road rage. I get out of the car, the guy comes at me, I slip, I punch. Like when I ask a guy to visualize violence, what they actually visualize is a movie fight scene.
Yes. Every time. Yes.
Nobody has a real idea of what violence looks like, smells like, tastes like. And it's and it's it's one of the big areas that has helped. Trying to think of a polite way to say this, but fuck it. It just generate more haters because a lot of people in the martial art community that don't understand what we do. So if you don't understand it, you got to hate it, as opposed to research it and look in. Like, how is this guy at 61 years old working more than he was working when he was 50, then he was 40, then he was 30, then he was 20? Exactly. Why is this company still relevant? Instead of looking at that, they're like, I disagree, so I must fucking hate it. But what I did is I created it several years ago to help people understand this. I said, look, there's 4 core categories when you're practicing martial arts for self-defense. Because the idea, there's an assumption that whatever school you decide to go to, if you went, I'm going to learn to defend myself, you're going to look in the yellow pages and you're going to see Hapkido, Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, Sambo, all of that. And every single one of them says self-defense in the advertisement. Mm-hmm. The problem is the neuroscience of learning and how the brain, I said this early, right in my introduction, the neurobiology of fear. If a sudden stimulus is introduced, a violent stimulus is introduced at the right distance, with the right timeline, and that means close, fast, and hard, your executive function, the part of your brain that controls access to the cognitive brain, gets hijacked by the amygdala, the limbic system, the reptilian brain. And if you think you're going to get hit, it will trigger a startle flinch, which is primal gross motor movement to cover your head and push away danger.
Yeah.
And it will also immediately induce a fear spike.
Yes.
And so there's 2 things, there's 2 very cool, important things happening almost simultaneously. If your instincts and intuition pick up danger, which is I've been interviewing victims of violence for 40 years.
Yeah,
This,
yeah.
this is consistent with every single one of them, man. Every single one of them, if you ask the right questions in the right way and you peel the emotional, psychological onion of the experience, they all
Mhm.
say, now that I think about it, I did have a bad feeling before it happened.
Yeah, yeah. I remember
So
you
our
mentioning that on your podcast many
yeah,
times.
so our intuition is like our radar, and but
Yeah.
we're all so domesticated, man. You know,
So
we
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We oh, we have a problem, we call 911. Oh, we live in a bubble, or we think someone's going to, like, the
So
cavalry's
true.
going to rush in. So it's an interesting thing. When I ask you, dude, what would you do here if a guy said "fuck you" and grabbed you? You'd go, well, I put my hands up here, I'd punch him in the face, I'd
Yeah,
pop his ears, I do.
sure.
These are all theoretical answers to a hypothetical question.
Yes, yes.
When I look at the evidence, and what I mean by evidence, again, remember, my main clients are law enforcement, military.
Mhm.
So I've seen body cam, helmet cam,
For sure.
dashboard video,
Yep.
CCTV
CCTV. Yep.
of shit that you've never seen that doesn't make it on CNN.
I believe it. I believe it.
And when I look at that, and I tell people, look, this is why, like, our scenario training program, completely different program that we teach to professionals, is called evidence-based scenario training.
Mhm.
Right? Like, why would I be compelled to use the word evidence-based scenario training? Because I
Yep.
want to get people's attention right off the bat.
Exactly.
So when I say, look, we're only going to look at evidence to
Exactly.
inform and inspire the training.
I
So
like that.
it's not what you believe, it's what we see. And what we see is what CCTV actually says to us, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of, it, this is kind of coming back full circle. I said I created these 4 categories for
Mhm.
studying self-defense. Category 1 is studying self-defense through the lens of, I train in traditional martial arts.
Mhm.
Shotokan, Kyokushinkai, any type of karate system, Taekwondo. These are what we call and the numbers aren't important. It's just, I said these are category 1.
Oh, sure.
Category 2 is all combat sports.
Yep.
Category 3 are all the reality-based self-defense
Mhm.
systems. Then I call category 4 the violent encounter. And the violent encounter, I only look at what do bad guys actually do to good people.
Oh, yeah.
That's our what's the word I'm looking for? The metaphoric laboratory, the incubator for studying what will work and what doesn't work. We only look at how attacks happen, who's committing them, right? So when you go to a category 1, category 2, category 3 school, what you're doing, and this isn't knocking that stuff, and I'll give you a nice metaphor
Yeah.
for your audience after.
Tony, I apologize for cutting you off right now. I've got to go grab my daughter really quick. This is
Go,
Murphy's Law. I will be right back. I'm so sorry for cutting you
go
off.
for it.
Thank you so much. We'll pick right back up here on
Okay,
category.
cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is Murphy's Law scenario. This should be nap time, but she decided that she really wanted to be on here and meet you.
What's her name?
This is Viviana, and
Viviana. That's a nice
she's
name.
honestly one of the biggest reasons I started even listening to your content and found you. But please, Tony, continue. So category
Yeah,
3,
yeah.
talking about reality based.
Hi, Viviana. Yeah. So what starts to happen is, um, I tell people, be careful what you practice. You might get really good at the wrong thing.
Yes, yes.
And when somebody hears that, the first layer of that sounds like a criticism.
Right.
It's meant to be provocative, because the fastest way for me to inspire you to make a change in your life or to take something seriously is to make it provocative, not to
Yes.
make
Oh,
it
of course.
sound not to make it sound like it's just, like everyone's a winner and everyone gets a first place trophy.
Wait, we don't? Come on.
No, no, sorry, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when I say be careful what you practice, you might get really good at the wrong thing. If somebody's willing to lean into that and go, well, what do you mean by that?
Yes.
That starts a conversation about myelination of a neuron and signal speed. It
Mhm.
starts a conversation about how we learn and then how we perform. And so
Mhm.
what I'm talking about really is, let's say you're doing jujitsu for 5 years. All you know is jujitsu. Is there any chance that you're going to throw a nice uppercut in a fight?
No,
Probably
of course
not,
not.
right? Not just because you haven't learned the movement, but your brain, your brain actually, creates a default. There's a
Mhm.
dopamine hit from practicing stuff that you love. So that's a psychological thing. And
Oh,
then,
yeah, okay. No, that
right?
makes a
So,
lot of sense, actually.
right. So you're going to go back to the things you like doing. And that's
Yes.
that dopamine connection in neural patterns. But deeper in the neural pattern is the way your brain learns is every time you do a meaningful rep of something, your brain gets used to it. So if all you've done every time you're in a confrontation is double leg the guy, drop him to the ground, try to mount him, choke him out,
Yeah.
and this isn't
It's
a
a
criticism.
script. Yeah.
It's well, semantically script, I get what you're saying, but what's actually happening is you're creating a neural pattern. You see an elevation change
Oh, yeah.
and you grab a head for a guillotine or sprawl or you
Mhm.
pull guard. Now, it sounds like I'm like harping on jujitsu, but if you were boxing for 5 years
Mhm.
and a guy went to tackle you, you're not going to do a guillotine because it's not in your toolbox. You don't
Right.
understand how to
Yeah.
hook, right? And if you're doing taekwondo, you're not going to throw an uppercut. So anyone of you
Yeah.
listening out here, if you're into martial arts, what I'm talking about is your eyes and your ears, your auditory, your visual sense they're trained to look for patterns.
Mhm.
And so a good boxer, if he sees somebody load a punch, he's going to fire a jab or cover and rip a hook punch
Yes.
because in his training with his coach and his sparring, he's created patterns that release patterns to intercept and counter based on boxing. That's what I mean by careful you practice. Now, here's the whole thing. You could be a boxer, you could be a taekwondo expert, you could be jiu-jitsu, but let's say you just parked your car in a shitty part of town, you're going to a concert or a bar, you couldn't
Yep.
get anything close, and all of a sudden, two guys appear out of the shadows. Your brain doesn't think, how do I de-escalate? How do I diffuse?
Oh,
What's a
yeah.
nonviolent posture? How do I manage my fear? What are some good distractions to use right here? Should I run? Should I? So if your ego, your tactical ego, or your own, and you mentioned guys in general will do this. Your own ego is like, hey, what do we got going on here? You'll default. The boxer's going to go and he's going to do this. The
Yep.
taekwondo is going to get in a side stance. The jiu-jitsu guy is going to think, okay, I got to get under this. But maybe, and this is the hypothetical thing. Remember, I said right in the beginning, my goal is to make good people safer.
Yes.
Maybe the most tactical thing you could have done there was run.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if ego or pride keeps you in the fight and then the thing escalates, you'll default to the neural pattern that you trained your body to do if it can access that. So without getting deep into the
Yeah.
neuroscience, that's exactly what I mean. So what we do is like my students, when people bring us in, it could be a SWAT team, it could be a military group, it
Mhm.
could be uh, like I've got some friends in the MMA community. Kieran Fitzgibbons runs like probably one of the top combat sport gyms. In fact, the name of his gym is Combat Sports Academy. And they've
Mhm.
got K1 fighters, UFC fighters,
Oh,
world
nice.
class jiu-jitsu. But he'll bring me in to talk to his fighters. He's done it. We've done a number of seminars together. He'll because he says he'll tell his guys, look, you're amazing at this, but understanding the de-escalation, the mindset, the startle flinch, the scenario, that's another skill set.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know so it's I don't know how many people on your show, we're probably talking too much about martial arts, but how many people on your show are into this stuff? But it's
Yeah.
what we're doing. It's almost like this. Here's a fun metaphor. Everyone thinks they're a good driver
Yes.
and everyone thinks they're in good shape. I mean, like the people that train. And
Sure.
so in this metaphor, I go, if somebody hits you in a car accident, they fall asleep at the wheel, they're texting, they're drunk, and it's bad. What's going to save you? Is it your driving? Is it your car? If it's a bad accident, what's going to save you in 2021? Your airbag.
Yeah.
The startle flinch, my whole system SPEAR, which stands for Spontaneous Protection Enabling Accelerator Response. It's the study of the startle flinch as a protective tactical tool. And it's how do we weaponize the startle flinch? If you scare me, DeMarco, and my hands come up,
yeah,
how do I turn that into a palm strike or a violent shove? How do I use it to shove her, to push away danger or cover my head and then recalibrate? And so, you're in good shape. Let's say we decide that you're a 1967 restored Mustang and you've got like all this stuff. What's missing from this is an airbag.
Oh yeah, no shit.
so this is the fun metaphor, is that what we do is we're a company that comes in and makes sure that you have an airbag in your car, that it's installed and it's working properly. And so,
I love that. That's
I don't
awesome.
care. Yeah, I don't care if your car is a jiu-jitsu car or a taekwondo car or a boxing car, and it's a fun metaphor if people are open-minded enough to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's a great way to bring it all together, and like you said, bring it full circle. Because and I got to tell you, Tony, after we had our technological issue, I went on a bit of a Tony Blauer dive. I listened to probably 25 or 30 of your podcast episodes.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I was really, really into it. And it was cool to hear some of these obviously really badass, like jujitsu and military operators talking about how their specific discipline was only one piece of the puzzle, how learning, how to manage fear, learning, how to weaponize the startle flinch system, and how to do that was really the next piece. So I think it's cool. You talk to anybody who does, and we've all got friends that do jujitsu, BJJ, karate, taekwondo, Krav Maga. They think that they study their style, they can handle any situation with their style. Right. It's just, jiu-jitsu guy, I just got to take them to the ground and then we'll be okay. But like you said, if someone shows up with a gun or they, do some move that you're not used to, I think what's the quote? It's violence doesn't care what style you practice.
Yeah. Violence doesn't care what martial art you study.
Yeah. What martial art you study. Yeah. That definitely caught my attention when I first heard you say that on your podcast. I thought it was cool.
Well, it's interesting. Like if you're into handguns, but you're not into rifles or knives or spears or whatever, if you get obsessed with that, like that's the dopamine connection.
Yes.
Right. And then that's also the neural pattern. So if I suddenly give you a weapon you're unfamiliar with, your brain has to go, how does this work? Or am I confident to use this? And so people who listen, it probably sounds like I'm defending this too much, but I'm not knocking martial arts.
Right.
I've been a martial artist for 50 years.
Exactly.
I love martial arts, and all of everything that I've experienced in my life, the travel, the meeting people around the world, has been because of my martial journey. But what I recognized is that I think the reframe is someone goes, I got to get a gun and want to learn how to use a gun.
Yeah.
That's a different question or challenge or thesis statement than I need to learn how to protect myself.
Right. Yes.
It's subtle, but someone who says I need a gun to protect myself doesn't think about situational awareness or knives or defending from weapons or what other weapons might I need. And it's interesting. So how in the 80s, I was hypothesizing to my class, and one of the things that I said that became a quote, what would be called a meme these days, I should probably make one, is the theory determines the experience. The theory determines the experience. So
I like that.
If I say that, it was like, well, like when I hypothesize on a theory, if I actually fill in the blanks and do the research, that determines my experience. So if I say I got to get really good at guns because guns equal safety,
right.
That's very narrow. It might be true versus what do I need to know to make sure I'm safe and my family's safe? because that might involve um, alarm systems, lights, uh, deciding where I'm going to live or where my
Yep.
kids are going to go to school. It's a much broader picture. And people do it in other parts of their life, but they ironically they don't do it for themselves. Like
Right.
if you're a good driver, you intuitively are looking out for the other guys.
Yes,
You're
absolutely.
you're maybe if you're planning a trip, you're going, hey, we're driving through this area, so we got to go. We're going to make sure we got to get gas up here because there's no gas station for this long. Do we have enough? So it's interesting in other areas like camping or a road trip. We're very proactive with our safety.
Oh yeah.
Most people are, but we aren't about our personal safety. Just walking around work, walking to the office, and it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
No, I think that's a man. That's a really that's a very interesting observation and very true. You're right about that. Other facets of life, we are very proactive. We plan. We have contingency plans, and
Well,
we don't do that for most of us for safety.
yeah,
So
I mean, I've been making this joke for years is that everyone practices self-defense in all other aspects of their life other than actually self-defense. And what I
yeah,
mean by that is, you know, you're raising your daughter. You're not going to go to the park with her and drop her off, put her down, and then walk away and go do
no,
errands. In fact, where you put her down, you're going to look for dog shit and broken glass and shit she
of
can
course,
put in her mouth in danger. If
of
you
course,
if you bring her to a park, you're looking, is this, hey, this child's equipment that's rusty over there. I'm not taking her here. You're going to find another
Mhm.
park. Like you observe. If you're sitting there letting her explore and you see two people walk by, immediately your dad's symbiotic bodyguard instinct goes, who are those guys walking near my
Yeah, and
near my
don't get
kids?
too fucking close.
All, right? Or like all of that, right? You're on the street with the stroller going for a walk. You're looking at all these. But if you didn't have your daughter, you'd probably on your phone looking
Yep,
down, like
wouldn't be thinking about it. Yep.
almost like stepping into traffic. It's amazing. Um, and to expand on this for any families listening to this, because it's an interesting thing. You'll look at the side of ingredients for food. I want to try and eat healthy. That's got too much sugar. Okay, that's a form of self-defense. You brush your teeth a
Oh
couple
yeah.
of times a day at least. That's a form of self-defense. You try to get sleep, right amount of sleep. That's a form of self-defense. In other words, at a holistic level, if you're an informed human, you try to live a safe life, not a
Yes.
paranoid life, but a safe life.
Right.
I'm not
Exactly.
gonna put I'm not gonna put this in my body. I don't want my teeth to fall out of my mouth. I'm gonna drive carefully. I'm gonna try and get some sleep. Let's not go down, you know, this street here with my family. But if I ask, so intuitively, we're all exercising elements of self-defense. But if I ask most people, would you know how to protect yourself? Most people have not taken that dive into
Yeah.
personally exploring it, and
Mhm.
it's a curious paradox for me because that's my main business.
Oh, absolutely. And Tony, I swear, I feel like you read my paper. I don't know if you hacked into my system and read my stuff. Because those are actually the next couple of notes I had were talking about kind of the process, like the steps, and then the in advice for families. So this actually leads right into the next question. So I'm someone who's never practiced martial arts before. I wanted to as a kid, but my parents, I guess, for some reason, they just didn't want me to do it. I ended up doing other sports instead. And but for someone like me who comes across your content and really resonates with me as something that I'm really into, what would be the next steps? Because I do work out, I do eat pretty healthy, I take good care of myself, I
Sure.
do make good conscious decisions, but um, what would, for instance, and for you to go way to plug yourself and your products, if I wanted to get started working with Tony Blauer to learn this stuff that I don't know, what would be the next steps?
So for the layperson who's like, oh, because like you could hire me, right?
Yes.
And then and I actually don't. I've got like 20 people on my training team that run courses around the world, and we've got
Yeah.
hundreds of affiliates. But you could go, oh, I just won a lottery. I'm actually going to hire the founder but that's
Yeah.
a,
If that
like,
happens, that I will totally hire you.
okay. And what I'm doing is I'm making a joke to say, like, that's not the place to start, right? Unless you go, oh my God, like I gotta do this one-on-one. And what I'm actually leading to is you don't. If you're a little skeptical or you're a little fearful, ironically, a lot of people are afraid to study self-defense, but it's a fear of, like, they don't have an actual mission and therefore goals and therefore a plan. And so that's what we help people do. So if you don't know where to start, it's hard to start. And then you're overwhelmed and bombarded. What we do is we say, hey, listen, we have a 2-hour live online course called The Essentials of Personal Safety. It's 2 hours. It's $49. So there's no barrier to entry. You do it live. It's one price for your family. If you got your wife and 2 teenage kids, your obviously daughter's too young
Well,
to
not yet, but yeah.
that, right? But what I'm saying is, like, whether you live alone or you're a family of 5, it's $50.
That's awesome.
And it exposes you to, like, again, I've been studying violence, fear, and aggression for over 40 years. It exposes you to our protocol we call the 3Ds: detect and avoid, DTU, diffuse and de-escalate and defend. It shows you the essentials of the startle flinch conversion and some simple tips about how to protect yourself if something happened in your doorway, things to think about.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
so it's not like you're not learning a martial art. You're learning to think about personal safety. So step 1 would be EOPS, this Essentials of Personal Safety 2-hour course. The next thing we do is a 1-day course called Be Your Own Bodyguard. That's done live and in person.
Okay.
And obviously, with the last couple of years, how weird the world has gotten.
Yeah.
We used to do a ton of these. The frequency and location is now kind of like really hit or miss because of people's fear. And I don't want to get into whether you believe in government overreach and all that shit.
Oh, seriously. I've seen your battle with the Instagram overlords. It's been very entertaining. By the way.
So if you follow me on Instagram, you know where I stand on all that. But the next thing to do would be to get to the Be Your Own Bodyguard live courses. Now the BYOB, Be Your Own Bodyguard, is taught with the same care and efficiency of taking like a basic first aid course taught by a paramedic or a firefighter, where you're learning life-saving skills in half a day. Our course is a day long. So if you went and took like a course from paramedic, you would learn how to put on a tourniquet, CPR, basic first aid, and it's life-saving skills, but you're not a doctor at the end of it. You're not even a paramedic, right? So this isn't, and I always make this joke, because like if you ask a lifelong martial artist or somebody who's really into stuff, hey, can you learn self-defense in a day? They're going to look at you and go, of course not. That's bullshit. Why? Because they're unintentionally, unconsciously confusing the principles of personal safety with learning a martial art.
Yes.
Of course, you can't learn jiu-jitsu in a day. You can't learn to box in a day. You can't learn Krav Maga in a day. But I can teach you about situational awareness and how to improve it. I can teach you nonviolent postures and de-escalation protocols that are based on a moral, ethical, legal foundation. And these are skills that even highly trained martial artists have never been exposed to. So, so listen, I've been doing this for decades. We're still in business. This obviously works. So that's the next stage. And for people who can't get to the live course or can't host a live course, because that's how a lot of it happens, is you could say, shit, I got 30 clients that are married or engaged or whatever. I could get, you could get 20, 30 people together. I send one of my trainers to wherever you live. Suddenly, you could selfishly go, you know what, I'm going to organize one of these for my family and friends.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then everyone chips in. And that's how we do a lot of them, where someone goes, I don't have a martial arts school, but I listened to your podcast. I want to learn this. I also do something really cool called the Garage Gym. I teach 5 days a week on Zoom. You can see where I'm sitting in my background.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I teach movement protocols, tactical fitness, and this is for people that are a little bit more serious, but they want direct connection, exposure to me. And so
Okay.
we do that 5 days a week. The classes are $6 each, which is
Oh, that's,
ridiculous.
man, that's great. That's very
You know,
affordable.
and they're on Zoom, and we've got literally close to 300 classes already recorded. Every week is a theme. You
Hmm.
want to learn knife defense, gun defense. You want to learn ground or approach the
Oh, that's
ground
cool.
mindset. So it's like it's like Netflix for the spear system,
Yeah, I love
where
it.
you go in there and there's, each class is 60 to 90 minutes, and they're taught. I'm full screen, like I'm spotlighted on this, so it actually looks like you paid for a one-on-one.
That's
Um,
exciting. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really cool.
So there's a lot of your daughter thinks so too. Um,
Yeah,
the
she's really pumped about this.
um, so tons of options for anybody if they want to dig in.
That's
Um,
really cool. The one thing I did want to ask you about, funny enough, the one course you didn't mention was the one that caught my eye, because I signed up for email newsletter, and hey, hey, was the No Fear seminar.
right.
Would you say to do I'm sorry, the essentials of personal defense before the No Fear, or would those kind of, do
If
they complement each other?
so, if people want to explore my no fear stuff, we have a free ebook, and maybe you can share the link with
Yeah,
your
I'm gonna link all of this below for
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. So, you know, I make a joke. It's only 9 pages long. People go, why didn't you make it longer? I said, oh, I could have. I mean, I've got thousands of pages of stuff written.
Yeah,
I send out a newsletter 3 times a week. We've got a book there. Um,
exactly.
but I make the joke that most people won't even buy a book, let alone complete a book. So this is 9 pages, but it took me 40 years to write that. It took me
Right.
it's 40 years to write. So yeah, that's a great question. What you asked there is I believe if I had a choice to teach somebody my weaponize the startle flinch or to teach them my no fear program, and I could only pick one, I would always go to the no fear.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason why is I know this for a fact that if you can't manage your fear, you're not going to fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes for business, that goes for family, that goes for
Mhm.
relationships. So the no fear program isn't about physical self-defense, although it directly applies. The no
Yes.
fear program is about managing any fear in your life.
Mhm.
And so if you're sitting here going, yeah, I don't want to, like, there are people who think if I study violence, I'll attract violence. Well, that's nonsense.
Yeah. I remember you
Um,
saying that on the
you know,
podcast with
you know,
yes.
um, and so if you're sitting on the fence, you're a little hesitant. What I would do is get the Making Friends with Fear PDF. If you can afford it, and it's dirt cheap, it's $97 for the No Fear course.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Um, and just for some perspective, man, uh, I don't like talking numbers here, but I mean,
Yeah.
if a company calls me up to do a no fear program for their executives,
Mhm.
if I'm doing this on, we're talking 10 grand and up to
Oh,
do
sure. Oh,
do
I
this,
believe it. Yeah.
right?
And that's you
So
obviously presenting it. Yeah.
so like $97. Listen, if you can't afford it, it's a lot of money. But if you could change your relationship with fear, what's that worth to you? I
Yes.
had to give it a price, and it's literally, it's part of how I take care of my family and my
Oh, of
team.
course.
You got to stay in business, right? You don't teach for free, you know.
No, definitely not.
And it's so funny because it's one of the things, like, you'll see comments online. Why is this so expensive? They haven't even done the course. I go, well, it'll change your life. What's that worth? Like,
Yeah.
but everybody who comments like that gets paid to do something, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like, but it's just funny when people complain about the price, forgetting that they charge for their time. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
e-
Oh,
e-
well, I mean, as a personal trainer, I compared to what I charge per hour, that's not very expensive.
right,
Based on like the demographic and everything. But yeah, and I think people don't understand. It's not just the product. It's the information, the knowledge, the experience, and the decades of time in the trenches that you've done. Right. It's not just okay. Here's your product. This is everything. It's no. You're going
right,
to get
yeah,
obviously experience. You're going to get knowledge. You're going to get insight. And what 40? I think you said 43 years for you of mistakes and lessons. So, and
right.
that could save someone like me 40 years of potential
Well,
mistakes and lessons.
that's part of it. I was doing a business um, kind of mentorship coaching thing, and there was a guy on there. He's around 50 years old. So I'm 61 now.
Mhm.
And he was asking, he said, and it was a guy in the martial arts self-defense business. And he was asking, do people really need to train with me to do stuff? And I said, listen,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not sure where you're coming from. And the answer is no, of course you don't need to train. And I said, what you could do is, the most important work that I do is based on understanding the neurobiology of fear, the neuroscience of learning, understanding the mechanism of, what type of stress can I put on the body and the mind that will improve the quality of the myelin that's wrapping the neuron, because that improves the signal speed. When a stimulus happens, you want the most efficient response and the fastest response. And so between stimulus response is this gap time called refractory delay.
Mhm.
How do you study that? And of course, you sort of understand what I'm talking about, but you don't unless you know the language. And I go, so the physiology, the kinesiology, the biomechanics, the startle flinch conversion, cross extensor reflex. I said, you could have figured all that out. You didn't. I did. But you could go on that journey. It took me, and I looked at the guy, I said, it took me 30 years
Yeah.
to go, holy shit, and then do a complete pivot to, this is the neuroscience of fear. This is the neuroscience of movement. When
Yeah.
when we are in a really fearful state, if we can convert that quickly, we can get safer sooner because we're back in the fight. I said, you could probably figure that out. Don't study with me. It'll take you 30 to 40 years to figure it out. I said, how old are you again? He said 50. I said, so when you're 80, you can open your business.
You'll be prepared. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And everyone on the call laughed. I said, like, why? The only reason you wouldn't want good information sooner, the only reason you wouldn't want it is because of ego.
Oh,
like
of course.
if you're like, well, I gotta figure this out myself. So yeah, I mean, I don't like the word hack because it's got a negative connotation.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
But if I could save you 10 or 15 years of looking for the needle in the haystack,
Definitely.
and go, here it is, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Oh, I'm 1000% with you, Tony, because I've had that same conversation with people as well when they talk about personal training. Not always guys. I hate to generalize too much, but let's be honest, we're kind of knuckleheads
Sure.
for the most part.
No.
I'll talk to people.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, guys, I was going to say, guys are knuckleheads. We're the species and the gender that will get into a fight over a parking spot. Or
right.
Are you looking at me, man? Like,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So, but it's so funny. I've had that same conversation of, they see the price tag for training, per hour or monthly or whatever. And when you see a number surface level, that's a lot. It is a lot, right? If you see hundreds or thousands of dollars, or in your case for your top level execs, tens of thousands and more, but what's the value, right? What will you actually get? How much time can you save to reach your goal? It took me, I haven't been in the game nearly as long as you have, but over the last just over 8 years, I've been a personal trainer. And on top of that, the last 10 to 12 years, I've been just physically active and working out myself. I've jacked up my back. I've tweaked the shoulder. I've done this, I've done that. And I've learned the mistakes, right?
Sure.
Deadlift this way, squat this way. This is what happens when your knee caves in on the squat a little bit too much, So I can take that, 8 to 20 years of experience, and I can hopefully compress that time frame for you and help you avoid those mistakes that I made with my own body. Just like you are helping people prepare to help, combat scenarios like your fighter experience back in 1980. So you've taken it. I think it's beautiful. You take a failure and something that can actually feel very embarrassing and humiliating, but you can build upon it and basically, like the phoenix, from the ashes, create something new. So I think that's really badass. So
dig it, man. Thank you.
That's awesome, Tony. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I totally could go another 1 or 2 more hours and go Joe Rogan style, but I know you obviously we're both busy, and I got to get this one down for a nap if she decides to do it. Let's close off with we've talked about your programs and everything. I'm going to link everything below, but where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you to check out what you're into and sign up for your programs?
Yeah. if you go to info.tonyblauer.com, and the links will be below, that kind of lists like how to get that free PDF, the Making Friends with
Yeah.
Fear, and it lists a bunch of other stuff. If you scroll all the way through there, you can do stuff with me on Patreon. You could sign up to the newsletter. So everything's on that link, but it'll be in the show notes. If you're a big Instagram person, I'm on Instagram as Tony Blauer, although I'm regularly shadow banned. So good luck finding me or tagging.
You need to stop being an independent thinker, okay?
Right,
The overlords don't like that.
I know. What? Okay, yes, I'll listen to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and if you go to that profile, it'll show you all the other Instagram accounts. But I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and just as my name, Tony Blauer, and you can follow me in all those places. Our main website is Blauer Training Systems, and if you go to that.com, blauertrainingsystems.com. If you go to that kind of links it to all the 4 verticals in my company. One is our training gear called High Gear, then SPEAR, which is the acronym Spontaneous Protection Enabling Accelerated Response. It's all the different training we have, whether you're military, law enforcement, healthcare, all of that. And then we've got personal coaching by me, and then our No Fear programs.
That's awesome. Well, Tony, I got to go ahead.
Yeah, FYI, our No Fear is spelled KNOW.
Yes.
Get to No Fear. That's an important distinction.
Yes, get to No Fear. And I do one last little thing that we can close up. One thing which I highly recommend everyone, please read that ebook. What was the name of it again, Tony? It was
Making Friends with Fear.
Making Friends with Fear. Thank you. Yeah, I read that the night before you and I were originally going to do our podcast. And I just love the fact that you talked about choosing courage, and you talked about how very similar, funny enough, I always think of a movie reference, just like in the Dark Knight movies, you can't showcase courage without feeling fear. It's definitely a part of it. And I think it was cool versus like the No Fear shirts, obviously you remember back in the 90s and 2000s, how fear is a normal response. But through your system, we can learn how to manage it and how to use it as fuel, which I'm all about. Tony, thank you so much for your time. I loved this hour with you. Went by way too fast. I appreciate you being patient with my little assistant.
Yeah, she was actually great.
Yeah, she's really into it, and I'm very excited to. I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to be getting the No Fear seminar for myself and probably for my family and any of my friends and colleagues that would want to be interested, and the essentials of personal safety. Definitely. Would you say that after those, would that be a good time to potentially look into your garage gym sessions?
Yeah, I mean, like anyone can jump in. They're really, I recommend people start at the beginning. We do live and recorded, so there's 2 tiers of membership on that.
Oh, cool.
But if you wanted to go, you're in good shape, but are you tactically fit? Meaning, could you use your stamina, your endurance, your strength, your speed, your agility to protect yourself or your family? Well, you would, just in a primal sense. But how can we help shape that more? So like the way we do everything is about it's a tactical bias. But we have people who jump right into the garage gym. They don't do the other stuff.
Oh, cool.
But
if people that just want to just start doing something immediately,
like I've been around so long, like a lot of people are like, because we started this 2 years ago as an answer to the whole lockdown, and it got wildly popular.
Which is great. I'm very glad to hear that. I know a lot of businesses suffered.
Well, the thing was, what happened was there's a lot of people who, because of geography, just could never train with me.
Right. Yeah.
And then if my team was doing a seminar, some of them were like, hey, is Tony going to be at this seminar? It's like, no, sorry, this is in Australia. And even though I did travel the world, but as I got older and grew the company, my focus was on making sure that my trainers were world-class.
Yes.
And I would get to certain courses, like, our annual combatives camp I'm always at.
Definitely.
But we've got like 8 classes coming up in October and November around the country. Like I'm only teaching at 2 of them. My team is teaching the other 6.
Yeah.
So people are like, man, as great as my guys are, people are like, they wanted to, if they were hardcore martial art, they know I've been around for so long. So the garage gym was a chance to actually interact with me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
train with me, ask me questions, see me demo. So you don't have to do that. But if you did no fear, like if it was a layperson goes, I'm going to do this for 3 or 6 months and develop the skill set, getting the no fear program, doing EOPS would prime your brain and your mind
Mhm.
for everything in the garage gym. You wouldn't be scratching your head ever going, what are they
Excellent.
doing? It's just,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a good pre-brief.
Well, that's good. And I think that's great because that someone like me, like I said, I have no martial arts experience at all. So I would definitely. I'll be honest with you right now. I would immediately get a fear spike as soon as the Zoom started and we started training together. So I would definitely get that. So
That's
that is
normal.
awesome. Well, Tony, thank you so much for your time, and I just want to leave all of our audience members and you with a good message. Train your body, feed your mind.